We're going to demo everything anyways. So, where we are right now is, and you missed the first 3 minutes of the lecture, so I'm going to go back. We're on October 10. We are looking at Chapter 8 online, which matches Chapter 6 of the book. So I made note of that in the notices. So a list is a series of items. Let's see. So phone number is equal to, and you fans of classic rock will know 8675309. That's my favorite series of numbers. Okay. If I want to print them out, there's a couple of ways. For in or for num in the phone array, phone list, print the num. That works just fine. You can use a while loop. X is equal to 0, except I'm going to call it I for index. I is equal to 0. I is, or while I is less than the length of the phone list. Print out phone at index I. Oh, and then increment I. I plus equals 1. Both of those work just fine. What if we wanted to insert an area code into this? Well, let's not insert an area code in it. Let's append a value to it. Now, let's just go and look at our text and decide what we're going to do. So just like in strings, if you try to access an element that doesn't exist, you know, this guy is 7 long, like phone numbers are. So if we try to access element 7, which would be 1 past the end, or 8 or 9, it's going to give us an error. It's going to blow up. You could put it in a try except block, but meh, you just want to really avoid doing that. Not avoid using try except. You want to try using the wrong index values. You can use in. So now that we have this phone number list, we could do, I'm curious if there are any ones in it. If 1 in phone, print, I found a 1. Else, colon, print, there is no 1 in single quote, phone, single quote, double quote. About time to run it, make sure it works. Alright, it printed out the numbers twice as we expected, and then it says there is no 1 in phone as we expected. And if we substituted a number that really worked, you know, like a 0, it would work. If there's a 0 in phone, print, wow, I found a 0. And tell you what, rather than just printing out that word, let's actually print out the list. In, and type in the word phone there. That's our actual list name. Python makes it easy to print the values in a list. It prints them all in one line. When you run it, you'll see what I mean. Some languages make it real difficult to print them out like that. But see, this is how it prints a list. If you tell it just to print a list, it gives you that. Square braces, 8675309, which looks how we defined it, right? We defined it with square braces and then a series of values separated by commas. Looks the same. Spaced appropriately, though. If we went and we took all the spaces out of our declaration up here, which I already were, it's still going to be formatted with spaces between the values, just because that's how it prints it. So let's change this 7 to a 1. Which index value is that? Well, that's index 0, so what's that one? Yeah, it's going to be 2. So phone number 2 is equal to a 1. Whoops. Now let's print out the phone number again. So it prints 8615309 now. Seems like we're always writing things that sum up series of numbers. You can write code that does that yourself, or you can just call a sum function, which is what you do in real life. But we need the idea of what it's doing. So in order to calculate a summation, you have to initialize your accumulator, but I'm going to call it total, equals 0. And then you iterate or traverse the list, adding each element to the total. That's what you got to do. Since a for loop is the easiest way of doing that, I'm just going to do it like this. Total is equal to 0. And let's add up all the values of the phone list. For in our phone, I'm just using in for number. I could even use the word. For every number in the phone, total plus equals the num. Now we have a total. Very similar to our ones where we were using, a while loop or a for loop, just to add a whole bunch of numbers in sequence. And then how do we calculate the average? The average is equal to the total divided by how many items are in the list. Well, we know that there are 7 items in this list just because we watch ourselves create it, but I don't want to hard code it that because we may edit the phone number to include an area code. So total divided by what? How do I know the length of the list? It's len total, like that. All right, that's one way. It took us 3 lines to calculate that total. There's a faster way. Total is equal. You're correct. I botched that. Thank you so much. There we go. So the average is equal to total divided by the length of the phone list. I don't know where length of total came from. That would have crashed. Faster way to, well, not faster, but the easier way to write code that sums a list is just to use the sum built-in function. So total is equal to the sum of all the elements in the phone list. Ought to give us the exact same value. Average is equal to total divided by, for some reason there's no average function. The only trouble you can get into doing it like either one of these methods is that if the list is empty, you're dividing by 0 and it will blow up. Here's how you define an empty list. Do you really want to use empty lists? Well, quite often you'll declare an empty list and then start adding values to it. Like if you're going to write a grade program and you wanted them to create a list of scores, you would initialize it to be an empty list. That's an empty list right there. Now I could do this. Total is equal to the sum. I just called it empty because I want you to remember that it's an empty list. Great. Now average is equal to total divided by the length of the empty list. Bad news. That's going to blow up. Alright, it says division by 0. You personally have to decide what the average is if you don't have any elements. If there are no elements at all, is the average 0? That's not strictly correct, but maybe it's good enough for displaying, for the user. But you can check that. You could do if the length of empty is greater than 0, calculate the average. Let's print it out. Else, print could not calculate average. Or let's say list is empty. list empty, semicolon, could not calculate average. And that's what it should say. All right, so the list was empty, could not calculate average. So if I ask you to write a program that lets the user enter a series of numbers to add up and calculate the average, go ahead and take into account that if you enter that if you let them do a sentinel value to exit the loop, that might be the very first thing they do. You know, you put in one of these codes and it prints out, you know, enter test score or -1 to quit. And that's the first thing they do is, well, I don't want to do like that. They type in -1. You can't calculate the average. So you have to test the length of it before you can calculate the average. Traversing a list. Traversing, I sometimes call it iterating through a list because I've learned that in other texts. Listen, the Python authors tend to use traversing. So, traversing a list is stepping through it, usually with the for value in list syntax. This works well if you need to only to read the elements of the list, but it does not work if you need to change the value of all the numbers in the list. And the reason why is cheese just gets a copy of the value. So we still have our phone number. Let's say we wanted to double every phone number or divide them all by 2. And we tried a for value in list syntax. So for every number in our phone number, num equals num divided by 2. And then let's print out our phone number again. That's not going to work. The reason why is because num is just a copy of that list item. It is exactly as if this loop was written like this. You don't have to type this because I'm just going to delete it. But x is equal to 0 for x in range, like I said, don't bother typing, 0 comma the length of the list. Well, I guess you could. I don't care if you do or not. And then you said num is equal to the phone at that specific value. And then you tried to change it. Num is equal to num divided by 2. Is that changing the list? No, it's just changing the value of num, which is a copy of that element. So, for value in list loops do not allow you to change values. As you traverse it. For that, you need a while loop. So this is because the above loop really is this behind the scenes. So instead we need to use just a good old while loop or a for x in range loop. For I in range for my iterator. For I in range, which I should have done up here, 0 comma length of the phone colon phone number at position I is equal to phone number, or just my divided by equal to, right? We all know what that means. Divided by equal to. And then print the phone out again. A couple folks miss the idea that you have to use 2 equal signs on an if statement. Can't do if age is equal to 17. You have to do equal equal. I put that comment in there, so you should know by now. All right, let's run it. It should print it out one time with the original phone number and then the second time with all the numbers divided by 2. And there we go. Half of 8 is 4, half of 6 is 3, half of 1 is 0.5. This is how you actually have to write it if you're going to modify the values, whatever change you're going to make. There is a weird syntax you can use called list comprehension, to where you could write that sentence, that statement, in a single line of code. But we're not going to talk about that yet. A for loop over an empty list never executes the body. For x in empty, print, this never happens. Yeah, it'll never print that if empty is an empty list. Although a list can contain another list, a nested list still counts as a single element. So how many elements are in this? There's 1 element, 2, 3, and then 4. Alright, so list operations. You can add 2 lists together. Let's add on our area code to our phone number. Phone number is equal to 1405 plus our original phone number. Except we've messed up our original phone number. Let's make a copy of our original phone number before we mess it up. And you classic rock users know that that's Jenny's phone number. So Jenny is equal to the phone. We just did that so we have a copy of it. And then let's say phone is equal to 1, 4, 0, 5 plus Jenny's phone number. And let's print it back out. So we've done concatenation with strings. Now we're doing concatenation with lists. So I just added that line. That was new. I just added that line. That's new. And I added that line. And then it's 1405. Wait. I goofed it. I put that in the wrong place. How did that get divided?
Oh, you said Jenny equal to phone. Those are 2 pointers to the same list.
2 pointers to the same list. That is correct. If I want a copy of the list, I have to clone it. And you do that by saying, I want the first element of the list all the way to the last element, but I don't know those positions, so I'm just going to do that. That gets me a slice of the list, but it's the entire list. Copy the contents of the entire list into Jenny. Why did it not work before? Because when I did phone, Jenny is equal to phone, I just wound up with 2 references to the same list. Just like you have 2 street signs pointing to the same street. Just because you have 2 signs doesn't mean you have 2 streets. They're pointing to the same street. If you want to copy it, you have to do some syntax similar to this. I mean, there's always more than one way of doing things, but that's the fastest way. You say, I want a slice of my list, but I want it to start at the beginning and end at the end. And just remember, if you leave off the number before the colon, it assumes 0. And if you leave off the number after the colon, it assumes the end of the list. Thank you for spotting that. I may not have spotted that near as quickly as you did. Okay, so we're back to printing out our original phone number, but we have inserted 1405 in front of it. And I just wouldn't make for as nearly a good a song. 14586153009. No. Random rock trivia. Huey Lewis and the guys who wrote this song were originally in another band in the early 70s together. And they split off. Aren't you glad you know that? Okay. What's next on our list agenda? The fact that these are similar to strings make it pretty easy to go through this chapter. So if this is your list right here, A, B, C, D, E, F, and you just want you want every element starting at index 3 going to the end, well, what's that going to be? It's going to be D, E, and F, because that's index 0, 1, 2, and D is your third one. Yeah, and there we go. That's how you get the entire list. A mega slice. A slice operator on the left side can update multiple elements. This is weird syntax, which I never use. But you could do this. Phone number starting at position 1 and going out to position, wait, we want to change these 3 values. So we're going to start at 1, 2, 3, and we need to go up to 4. We're changing our area code. Jenny has moved. Now why did I make it 4? Because this second number is just like range. It's 1 past the stopping point. So that's 0, 1, 2, and 3. And then we're going to give some new values for this. What is Tulsa's area code? 918? 9, 1, 8. And then print the phone number out. Python makes it way easier to do that than any other language I've used. Python is the only language I know that lets you do this. I may have already shown you this, but if you have x is equal to 10, y is equal to 11, and z is equal to 12, and you want to rearrange, well, let's just do x and y, and you want to swap those, you could do x comma y is equal to y comma x. And that just looks totally wrong to somebody who's rooted in the C, C++, C#, Java, JavaScript world of languages. Looks so wrong, but it works. And that's what happened here as well. We took 3 elements of the list and we replaced them. So when we printed it out, it said 1918, 8675309. Although I know I changed one of those numbers. The 7 is now a 1. So list methods, we can append to the end of the list with .append. Kind of the same thing that concatenation was doing. In fact, I'm not seeing a big difference. Oh, because it will only add 1 item? Let's see if that's true. Jenny also has a extension now. She's working in an office. So phone.append, she's at extension 8. That should work. But then, here's the syntax I'm curious about. Can I do this? Phone.append, and let's say that she has a passcode you have to enter. 789, 7, 8, 9. Is this going to work? I'm not really sure that that's going to work. Lo and behold, it did. As far as I can tell, there's absolutely no difference between .append and concatenation. We could have done the same thing as phone plus equals 7, 8, 9. Which makes the extend function that they show us here seem a little bit odd. Time to Google. What is the difference between append and extend in Python? Extend takes an iterable list and adds each element one at a time, while append adds its argument to the end of the list as a single item. Extend is more efficient. Oh, look at that. If you call append with a list, it adds it to your list as an embedded nested list. All right, okay, so forget what I said. We're going to revise our notes. We're just going to say that you can append a single value to the list, but if you want to add more than one value to the list at the same time, use extend. So instead of phone.append, it ought to be phone.extend and pass in 7, 8, 9. And I'm not going to take a lot of time to figure out what the difference between those two guys is. But let's print it out to make sure that it looks exactly like we're expecting. After append and extend, end quote, comma, phone. Oh, well, kablooey.
They worked just fine when we had...
I forgot the parentheses. Forgot the parentheses. Yeah, extend needs parentheses just like append did. So if you miss those parentheses because I deleted it and rewrote it, all right.
Oh, it actually puts it in there. That's cool. So extend. So if you append it, it basically gives it a nested list.
If you append more than one element. If you append a single element to it, well, I guess a way to phrase it is that the entire list is a single element, and so it makes an embedded list if you pass in a list. All right, we are about done for today. Deleting elements. This is a good one to mention. If you want to, it's kind of funny that they use this terminology because a list is not a stack. And once you take Java or something like that, you can learn what pop means. What it means is remove the last element from it. So I'm getting tired of our phone number. Let's do colors is equal to red, blue, green. Let's extend our list. Colors.extend and add 2 more colors. You don't have to type the same colors I do. White and silver. Let's print that list because it's nice. So print colors. Now let's remove the last item from it. C is equal to colors.pop. And let's print out C and colors at this point and see what it looks like.
Do you need brackets on extend?
Yes, I need brackets on extend. I don't know why I am messing up the syntax. Second time today. I've brought shame to my ancestors. Here we go. All right. So it popped silver off the list. Silver is no longer on the list. It has been cut. It has been deleted. It has been removed from the end of the list. That's what pop does. There are other ways of removing values from the list. You can remove a specific value with del. And you use that if you don't care about getting the last value. This code, pop, copied the last item into C before it removed it. But if you want, let's just remove the first value. Make sure I got the syntax exactly right. That looks weird, but I'm willing to accept it. I forgot the syntax would work. All right, delete colors 0. And then when we print the list, red should no longer be on it. All right, so it printed it out and it said blue, green, and white. We've removed the last one, and we've removed the first one. And that's enough. Okay, so our little list of things to study. Remember that you can append, you can concatenate with the plus sign. You can extend, which as far as I can tell does the same as concatenate, perhaps more efficiently, or else it wouldn't exist. You can pop, list.pop, and which is the same thing as doing delete, pop, not delete, delete list item -1. Those would be the two equivalent, except this one returns a value and this one doesn't. So delete L sub I, where I is the index. You can use for loops. We really need to stop now. You can use for X, or for element in list, or for value in list. Traverse it. Or you can write a while loop and use a range loop to do it a little bit more complexly, in a more complex fashion. Let's finish this one out. For value in L, print value. For I in range, length of L, and hopefully we know that L means the list. Print L at index I. Please remember both of those syntaxes. And use the second one if you actually have to change the values as you traverse it. And how to declare one in the first place. Like that. And in still works. IN. If 54 in list, do something. And if you wanted to, you could reverse that, if not 54 in list. All right, make a Dropbox for y'all so you can bail, get to your new class, or go home. So where did we get? We got to DEL. Bless you. Too bad L didn't wind up being lists. That would have been fun. Alrighty. M. Alright guys, go ahead and upload that.
Can you pull back up the...
Sorry. Here's our code. And I will upload these as notes, but I love it when y'all type them in. Alright, I'm going to stop the recording.